How's it going, everyone? Technoturtle here, and today I'm going to start my first part of my new series on building the ultimate PSP. Today I'm just going to be showing the process of modding it. It's a really simple project. If you know how to move files around on your desktop, then you can do it. I will say there are some dangers in doing it, so this is not really a tutorial, but feel free to follow along. If this is something you've never done before, I definitely would recommend finding a more in-depth tutorial, as messing it up could end up ruining your PSP forever and bricking it. I've modded a few PSPs in the past, but never anything to this extent. In fact, I have with me a red God of War PSP. I modded this a while back, just put a few retro games on it, but nothing special. But I'm kind of looking to have something to be like the definitive portable console I can bring with me anywhere. One of the biggest things I recommend for this project is grabbing a micro SD to memory stick adapter. I have with me a 32GB micro SD card. This is a good size for emulation, as really ROMs are so small you probably will never fill this thing all the way up unless you start getting into putting PSP games and PS1 games. That being said, in the future I actually want to upgrade to a 256GB SD card. I've heard some mixed signals online, but I think anything over 256GB won't work reliably. I've heard some people say that they've gotten 512GB to work, but honestly, I've also seen some people say anything over 256 wasn't working. One thing to keep in mind with having larger storage is that it actually will take longer to load when filled. So right now, when I open my PSP, there's only a few emulators on there, and it still takes a couple seconds from when you click them to when it opens up all of the emulators you have. I haven't experienced this firsthand, but I've heard that when you start filling up these cards, it's a little bit longer. That being said, I don't think it's so long where it's going to bother you. It's just something to keep in mind. Before we actually get into the modding process, I wanted to share a funny story about this PSP. So I used to collect PSPs, and whenever I'd find one at the swap meet or the Goodwill or cheap enough online, I'd order them even if they were broken, and I'd fix them up and sometimes mod them and either give them to friends or sell them online. But that being said, my original 1000 I had for a long time, and it had both a broken UMD reader and a broken screen. So my plan was to one day fix the screen and mod it, and that's what actually the idea for this first video was. So during a recent move, I found it again and I thought, this is perfect, I can't wait to do this video and start modding it, so I ordered the parts. As soon as the parts came in, I picked it up and thought, this is really slim, this is not a PS1000, this is a 2000. Opened up the back and sure enough, it was a 2000. So at that point I thought, did I just think this was a 1000 the whole time? Then, even weirder, I turn it on and the screen's not broken, which was the whole point of this video, was to fix the screen and replace the shell. And the 1000 parts are completely incompatible with the 2000. And then even more surprising, it was a Japanese model, which I don't even remember ever owning a Japanese PSP. So I'm not really sure where my 1000 series is, but hopefully I could find it one day. If not, I might order a broken 1000 just to still use these parts I ordered. But it ended up kind of messing up the order I had planned, so instead of replacing the shell, since I have to wait for the parts, I'm just going to do the modding today. So the first thing I'd recommend is getting all the files together that you're going to need. So the first thing you're going to need is firmware version 6.60. You can go ahead and look through on your PSP in the options under system information, and that'll tell you the version that's on there. If you already have 6.60, then you really don't need to do anything here. But if it's any other version, you can actually download this file so that you could upgrade it to 6.60. So secondly, you're going to go down to this website, willolo.net, and I'll have all the links in the description, but you're going to download the custom firmware. So what the custom firmware is essentially going to do is it's going to allow you to install third-party plugins on your PSP. Most notably are the emulators that you can put on the system. Lastly, speaking of emulators, Willolo has a collection of all the different emulators you can get. So if you're looking to just download one or two, you just want to put some Game Boy games on there or a couple systems, then I highly recommend you just go here, download the ones you want. You can do this later, you could do it now, but if you're looking to actually just really go all out on this thing and put a bunch of emulators on, I actually found this video by a YouTuber named Tech James, and he's actually collected all the emulators and put them into one zip file. So That makes it a lot easier if you're looking to just put them all on there. Now, one thing to be aware of is if you put all these files on your PSP, they're going to leave little programs and games options to open in your PSP. So it can kind of look cluttered, especially if you're not planning on using all of them. So I would still maybe recommend going through and just downloading the ones you want, or downloading Tech James's collection and dragging over the ones you want. So what I'm doing right now is transferring over the firmware 6.60 files, and basically that'll put a little area under games for you to run and allow you to upgrade or downgrade to 6.60. This is super easy to do. Basically, you're going to extract the files out, and then you're just going to drag the update folder to your PSP under the folders PSP and then game. Once you run it, it's going to take a couple seconds. It's going to be a black screen, and then it'll show you some different options to go through. Don't panic during this. It took a little bit longer than I expected. Don't turn it off at any point during this. That's how you can end up breaking it. So I highly recommend you keep your PSP plugged in through the entire installation process. So the second thing you're going to do is now we're actually going to install the custom firmware. This is a very similar process as before, but instead it's a custom firmware rather than a regular update. Basically, this firmware you're installing is the entirety of the modding. This is what allows you to put custom plugins on, put the emulators on, and play PSP ISOs. Just as before, you're going to extract these files and drag them to the same place you put the update. So the first thing you're going to run is this update, and press X. You're going to run through this whole process. It shouldn't take too long, and then it'll restart itself. Secondly, you're going to want to flash the files. So I actually haven't done this on my red PSP, which causes it so that every time you turn it off, you have to click recovery. It's not a huge deal, but obviously we might as well just do it. It's right there. This is something that shouldn't take too long. Don't be worried if it takes a little bit longer than it took me, but it really took me just a couple seconds for both the flashing and for the custom installation. After this, you can delete all the folders except for the recovery folder. The recovery folder is there just to run if anything happens where the file gets corrupted or it gets removed. It doesn't really happen too often, but it's definitely something you want to keep on your system. So at this point now, I have a modded PSP, and I can start adding emulators, ROMs, ISOs, whatever I want to add. Pretty exciting. Next thing we're going to do is add the emulators and ROMs. Now I'm just going to show me adding one emulator and a few ROMs here. It's really easy. You basically, in the same spot you were adding these custom firmwares and all these programs you were running, you're going to go to PSP, game, and you're just going to drag these folders straight in there. Now most emulators, you get the ROMs you need and you just drag them right into the folder listed ROMs. Some of them don't have that. In that case, they usually recommend just dragging them right into the folder itself. Again, I like to have things a little more organized, so I'll usually just make my own ROM folder. And when you actually open the games, you're going to see the file list there, and open that folder, and that's how you'll end up running them. Lastly, I just want to add an ISO for a PSP game in there. So you're actually not going to drag it into the same place that you put the other games and the emulators. You're going to go to the main directory, make a new folder called ISO, and then you're just going to drag them into there. Alright, so the last little upgrade you can do to one of these PSPs, you can actually overclock the CPUs. Now, overclocking will allow the games to run better and load times to be faster. The max overclock you can do is of 333 megahertz, though I have seen some people recommend 300 megahertz as a good balance between battery life and performance. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you guys like the final result and hope you learned something along the way. I definitely have some pretty cool ideas for future mods I'm going to do to this. I have a clear front plate on the way, so that I've always been a huge fan since I had the purple clear Game Boy Color when I was a kid of clear consoles being able to see the PCBs and everything, so I'm really excited to add that to it. I also want to look into adding some custom themes. I've seen some pretty cool ones online. I've never actually done that. I also want to make folders to organize games, because one of the things that can be kind of annoying is when you add PSP games, they're all just in that games folder in the same place that your emulators are. So it'd be kind of nice to have a separate area for folders as well as an area for emulators to keep everything separate. I'm not 100% sure that this is possible, but looking into it, it seems like something that I can do. I also want to add some larger storage at some point. I have actually 80 gigs worth of PSP ROMs, and it would be kind of cool to be able to add all of them, even though it's a little bit overkill. I also want to be able to put a couple PS1 games on. I know it's not as easy as just dragging them on there. I think you need to go through a little bit of a process. I've never done it before, but it seems easy enough, so that's definitely something I'm looking forward to doing in the past. Anyway, guys, hope you have a good rest of your day, and see you later.